As I always said, if not for this man, the only thing I would be saying into a microphone is, would you like fries with that? Pete Boyles, legend, the guy who got me into radio. I curse you every day. I can't.
Though I've batted you and slayed you.
Yeah. I can't believe you're hanging up the Spurs. That's it. Denver without Pete Boyles. It's like a day without sunshine, or a day without a hurricane, however you want to put it.
That's kind. And thank you for inviting me to do this. You and I go back a long way and a lot of good fights, and we didn't win all of them, but we
I tell you, before we get to when you entered my life and ruined everything, when did you start doing radio?
We did a final.
What did you do before that?
Yeah, we did a final show. We had Danny Hopkins on from the AAA Auto Club, and who ended up as Bill Owens' press secretary.
Right.
And I was going to Metro, and they had, and a kid I was going to school with, it's about 75, said, "Hey, I know where there's a job, but you got to get up in the morning and show up." And I said,
two things you were not good at.
No, I was actually pretty good at it, just what kind of shape you are when you got up.
Yeah.
And I went in, met Danny, and it was the writer for the traffic reports for the AAA Auto Club. And we were on where the auto club still is. And Danny hired me, and I went into the booth, and I called it counting cars. And you had to write down, but what I learned, and Dan Hopkins, who inevitably be watching this, we went down to a junkyard, and we got a radio out of this crashed car. It was a Mercury. And I didn't know about formatics, I didn't know about, dial position, I didn't know any of those things. But KOA, KHOW, and Kim had airplanes up, before helicopters. It was Dick Dillon, Art Newman, and the late Don Martin. And I knew that at certain 10 after the hour, this guy did a traffic report. So we pushed a button, and I would steal. I'd steal their traffic reports. and I'd make an amalgam of what Dick said or what Art said, and I'd make a traffic report. And then there's the Mr. On-Air guy, Mr. Announcer person, who always had a big voice. And I would, Johnny, and then I would give him the traffic report, and then we would do KOA. I forget who all we did. We did a disco station. And that's where I met Chris Olinger, because she was doing the news on the disco station. And we would do traffic reports. And then Danny, we went through a series of Mr. Announcer persons.
Right.
And by this time, I've got myself into grad school. And the final...
You were in grad school?
Oh, yeah.
To study what?
Economics and diplomatic history.
Give me a frickin' break.
Not for real.
I'm sorry.
No.
In my mind.
No.
You doing wrestling, I get.
Yes. Finest part of my life. Yeah. But actually, there's so many similarities. So anyhow, so I'm doing these traffic reports. I'm on air, and a guy named Jack Merker, the late Jack Merker, was working at Cat Radio, his PD, and he called and he said, you're smart. You got a weird voice. He said, I'm looking for a weekend disc jockey, and I needed money. And I went into Cat Radio. They were in Radisson Hotel, one floor below the Playboy Club. And I went in, and on a Friday...
Is that where the Warwick is now?
Yeah. I thought I said the Radisson was the Warwick.
Warwick, yeah.
Yeah, apologize. And so I went in, and I watched it, and that's back when you're talking about, here's the Starship. Those boards were like tip to tip, and there was 4 turntables and cart machines and microphones, and I said, wow, looks like,
cool.
But when you figured it out in pods and sliders, and so I watched him all day, and I came back the next day, and we're sitting in a jump mic, and he said, switch seats, and I'm looking out now and he's over here, and he got up about 20 to 4, and he said, do radio, and I'd learned logs and how to pull cards, and I can still close my eyes and see it. And I think the first tune I played was an Engelbert Humperdinck. And he walked out of the room. And I stood up and threw up in the trash can, and I did 20 minutes of the worst radio probably Denver ever had. And then the showstopper was, and he came in and he said, wasn't that bad. He said, let's go get a drink. And we went to the Playboy Club, and if you're a disc jockey, you could drink for free. Hey, come on in, And I said, wait a minute. Free alcohol.
Free alcohol.
And you get to play records. And so that's where I started working.
So I don't know if you remember the first episode of WKRP, where Dr. Johnny Fever is there, and he's Johnny Sunshine, Johnny whatever. Every time I saw that, I saw it recently because the guy who played it died, and I was like, that character is Pete Boyles. Wow. He's been on every airwave. He's done disc jockey. He's done this. He's done that. And you flip a switch, and there he is.
But that's how, now there are people called radio guys. What made Limbaugh great? Limbaugh was a radio guy.
Yeah.
He used the name of Jeff Christie. He used several different honor names. His big name was Jeff. He'd been fired twice, got blown out in Pittsburgh.
How many times have you been canned? Let's just keep it from radio.
No, I know, really. A lot of stuff you got the horse shot out from under you.
Yeah.
The first job was Cat, and then went religion. We lost our gigs there. KWBZ.
Oh, that's a great station.
Oh, it's the greatest little station in the nation. And when BZ folded, and that was the great Begathon that now people talk about, and it was Alan, myself, trying to think who else was part of that, but Mike Wolf, wow, there's a name.
Yeah.
Woody, I think, was part of that. And that folded. Hal took me to K-Hal, and I worked nights, 8 to midnight, left there and went to work for KOA. Went to, we generally you bounced for money or opportunity. And there's always firings, the great line that someone, I think it was John Lego, told me, you're like head coaches. We're going to hire you because someday we're going to fire you.
Right.
And so make as much money as you can between the two goalposts. You'll be all right. So, those guys taught you stuff. If you listen, but they were radio guys. And today,
talk to me about, and I haven't ever really articulated it the right way. I think if people get it, they get it. The magic of talk radio, not what it is now, but what it was. There was something about talk radio, and for me, it was this: is that you could call up talk radio, and before the internet, it was the only mass two-way communication. You think of NPR, you think about the Soviet broadcast system, great, huge one-way. Newspapers, one way. Yeah, you can write a letter to the editor, maybe they'll edit it, maybe they'll put it in. But there you are, talking to Denver, and any Yahoo can pick up a phone and call you on your crap.
That's raw.
And it is in the moment, and that guy has as much wattage behind what he's saying through his phone as you do sitting in the studio. Sure. And it's one of the reasons I think liberal talk radio never could take off.
No, remember, we were all communists back there when it began.
Right.
And then along came Mike Rosen, to his credit. And Mike was way before Limbaugh. Mike brought a conservative bent to talk radio. And eventually, because of people really figured out that the networks and the newspapers and all other, they were liberal outlets, Limbaugh. If there's a guy that you can turn around and say, you made this business work, it's Rush Limbaugh. Locally, it was Mike.
And there was a time, I've always said this, there's the Post, the Rocky Mountain News, they were powerhouses. Not what they are now. They were powerhouses, and the only people who could put them into check were you and Mike. And that you had a footing that you could pull this out and go, here's crap, here's why it's crap. Let's talk to the guy who really saw it, let's bring it in. And it was devastating. And I remember when I found you guys, you're kind of playing around the dial. Like, I'm tired of listening to Muskrat Love again on KIMN. And so, and it's like, wait, there's a guy talking about something, and you just get caught up into it. And it was something different. It was something familiar, but you learned stuff and you got camaraderie.
There was also this, I think, after age of 35, and then no matter what, two things happen. You generally come to talk radio because the rock and roll music we grew up on, well, that's on oldie stations now. That's on the Fox or something. Right. So, and now you can access that so many different ways.
Without the commercials.
Exactly.
Right.
And all talk radio, or it should be. I stole this from Tip O'Neill, and Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. All talk radio is local, and with the exception of Limbaugh, All of these syndicated shows fail.
Except for who's the late night guy? Art Bell. You know, that kind of.
But I got to know him a little bit.
There was no guy ever who could say with a straight face. And so after the anal probe, then what did the aliens do to you? You know, it was.
He was. Yeah. I mean, I got an Art Bell story, but there are guys that come along. Limbaugh is the classic example, and they got it. Imus got it. Howard Stern got it. They turn a corner. They see it differently. It's like the idea that everything was one way until Picasso sees it differently, or Einstein sees it differently.
But for me, it was the local part.
That's what happened.
That's what made it. It's what made you beautiful, and Rosen, and all of it was. Finally, we're talking about not what's going on in D.C. But yeah, you do. But I mean, the corruption that's going on in Denver.
Absolutely.
The corruption of the news outlets. The corruption of the city in general.
Can you imagine Kyle Clark taking calls? I can't. You know, I mean, some of the columnists that we have talked about in the past, they couldn't take calls, and they would stay away from radio shows. Come on, do the radio show. No, it's okay. They wouldn't do the show. And when you're going to do the show, I mean, you're kind of opening yourself wide open. And whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But that was the cool part of it. And I would think, okay, going in, you know, I used to always zip up the gorilla suit, you know, zip up the arms, put the hat on, you know, all right, let's go do some radio. If you did it right.
And I miss it. I still fill in every now and then, but I did late night on KOA for a decade. Yeah. It was the best time because...
No commercials.
Couldn't sell any commercials. Management was asleep, so they were too busy messing with you in the morning show and the afternoon drive show. That's all they, you know, and they're always trying to.
And plus 50,000 watts on KOA, you get it in your teeth in Montana.
There's an 850 in Chicago, and at night, KOA would knock it off.
That goes back to FDR.
Right, and so I get calls from Canada, calls from Mexico.
Sure.
It was
werewolves.
Oh, it was terrific, and it got weird. What was great was at the 10 o'clock hour, 10 to 1, 10 o'clock hour, you got people coming home or going to bed. And then the next hour, people are kind of going
to a couple
and then after midnight, the weirdos came out.
Yeah.
And then Rick Barber, you know, probably the longest lasting show in Denver, you know, would take it till the morning news, and it was WKRP. It had a family. It had a listenership. It wasn't corporate. I don't mean corporate in the bad. I mean corporate in that it's boring, and it doesn't have that local zip the way it did. Yeah.
It's gone.
Talk to me a little bit about when your friend was shot in his thing. I mean, because I remember that like it was yesterday, and I was a kid.
Yeah. There's 2 films being made about it now.
Really?
Yeah, and I've talked to the people and I've met with them, and let's see. He's finally going to go into the Press Club Hall of Fame, which unbelievable, the people they've put in these. He's not in the Radio Hall of Fame in Colorado. The Press Club, with respect, has brought in, and I've had some conversations. They're finally going to bring Alan into the Hall of Fame. I'd love to see him be in the National Press Club Hall of Fame.
I remember him as a kid. He was a weird dude, at least as radio personality. He you didn't know where he was going to land, but he was big.
Oh, I said at his eulogy that he was the greatest professional wrestler I ever heard on radio. Because if you knew the guy, and and he was adamant, and he had a short fuse, but he had a kind heart. He really, truly did. And when he went on air, then there's 3 people I know, and I said this on the final show on Friday: Dave Logan, Mike Rosen, and AB. They sat down and they got it. They didn't do what I did. They weren't traffic reporters and news writers and didn't read the news and didn't do time and temp and be a disc jockey and all that kind of stuff. Dave Logan literally took off his football helmet and went into radio. Rosen came out of the business community, sat down, and Alan had been disbarred as an attorney and had a shirt.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was disbarred attorney in Illinois. He was an alcoholic. It was behavior. I mean, I can tell you 100 different stories, but I kind of parallel a little of that. But when they sat down in front of the microphone, they got it. And
when you say it, what is it? So if we're moving to a world where people are going to podcasts. Talk radio is great for sports locally and a little bit, but the time when it was a powerhouse, I think, is gone.
It's gone.
So when you say it, if you had to explain it to your grandkid, it was what?
When Louis Armstrong, he didn't like being called Louis, liked being called Louis, once said, he said, if I have to explain it to you,
you don't get it.
You won't get it. And I
say that when I tell people about Casa Bonita. Now, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
But I think that when radio died, and we always have that, the day the music died, when Alan was murdered, and in spite of that being, years ago, that flipped it. And then the advent of corporate media, when I started out in the business, I saw the owner every day.
Yeah.
And then my first 2 jobs, and then when I worked with Bob, the first hit show on KLAK, and a guy named Art McCoy Broadcasting, really fine man. And he had a radio station in Hawaii and a radio station in Denver, where where he's spending the winter. But he would come to town, and he'd come in, boys, how are you? Art McCoy, he's a really fine man. And then I went from there to BZ, and I knew John Mullins and Corky Cartwright. K-How, I saw the guy twice, 3 times. By the time when I was working for KOA, when Alan and I, General Electric, owned KOA, we never met the guys. And it just got even more remote and more remote. And you pretty soon, but back in the day, and again, now I sound like an old man, and I am, but everybody was interlocked, and
it was
radio was.
Let me take a shot at it. Yeah. It was a station in that there were personalities on the station. There were guys who did the technical stuff. Yeah. There was a news guy, and it was a unit. What people don't get quite now is that it's been franchised out in a way that the guy who's doing local traffic could be sitting in Pittsburgh and he flips a switch.
Well, yeah, there's one big outfit here in town that does traffic for everybody. I mean, like I said, back in the days, thousands of years ago, we were stealing their traffic reports. I mean, and I've confessed to all of them. And they said, "Hey, we knew you were." But
who's it? You interviewed all these people. You got to meet your heroes. Yeah. Who stands out? When you say, I can't believe I got to sit down and meet this guy.
I know it sounds crazy, but there were so many wonderful people that came in, and there were people that you wish you'd never met because you had them in such esteem, and then you met them. I had an experience with Norman Mailer, and a good one. And when I was an undergrad, I took an English class. It was Norman Mailer. We read The Deer Park. We read Fire and the Moon. We read, everything, The Naked and the Dead. I mean, and I love Norman Mailer. He fought. He got in trouble, and so he had done a book called Harlot's Ghost. It was his last book. It was about the CIA, and I went out of my way to get him. And he came in. He had like his 5th wife or 8th wife, or whatever she was. And I sat there, and we're talking about the Deer Park. We're talking about, Armies of the Night, and all this kind of stuff. And I kept him. And he knew that I knew his work. Yeah. And so the show's over, and he stands up and he said, "What did you think of the book?" And I said, "I've liked your other work better." Now I don't know why I said it. And he came over and said, "Thank you." Shook my hand. And I'm thinking, I'm Pete Boyles from the Allegheny River, and I'm here with Norman Mailer. But I had guys that, Pappy Boyington, that don't...
wow.
Joe Foss, legends from the Second World War I had to meet. Great actors, wonderful politicians. I got to meet... I spent a lot of time with John McCain, just sitting like you and I, sitting, having a sandwich, and just talking to guys, and great athletes and prize fighters and writers and politicians. There isn't one moment, but it's that moment, and I'll shut up, that when you walk out of that room, you go, you want to call somebody and say, hey,
hey, Mom, guess who I talked to?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
I know
you.
that.
Exactly.
All right. That's not what you're known for. In my mind, the quintessential Pete Boyles, if you boiled him down to his essence, is nothing more than a middle finger to whoever the man is. Yeah. I mean, that has always been your MO. It reminds me of who's the guy who did Groundhog Day? Not Bill Murray, but the director. I'm blanking out. But all of his films, from Stripes to whatever, they were all giving it to the man. It was sure. National Lampoon's Animal House. It was giving it to the man, and it's like that's Pete Boyles in Denver. It doesn't matter who the man is.
Doesn't matter.
You just relish in taking him on. You and I got to know each other when I was on the RTD board, and
remember that, Johnny? That was a good fight.
I don't know my head from my ass, but I know that this tax increase that they're putting on the ballot is a corporate ripoff. This has nothing to do with moving people. It has everything to do with money. It's not going to do a thing. It's going to screw poor people. It's just bad news. It's a pig in a poke. We don't know what we're going to get. I don't know what to do, and I don't know if you called me or I called you.
I think I called you. You had written a piece in the Rocky.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right, that makes sense. And I said, I got to stop this. I mean, I don't know a thing, and. You like Velcro go, come on in here, my boy. We'll talk. And we ended up doing it seemed like every week we did a segment, and then towards the election it was like every day. And I remember one time
I think we won that one too.
Oh man, we didn't win it. We crushed it. I had no money, but talk radio, you and Rosen, meant that other people had to listen, which means I got the Rocky Mountain News editorial page to listen. Yeah. They came out against it, and RTD was just we crushed it. They spent $2 million. We spent $150, and we crushed it. And it was talk radio that did it. And then I was like, wait a minute. This is what you do for a living? You sit here and
sure.
and you piss off people?
Exactly.
And I went up to Chris Olinger, who was I think the program director there, and said,
just saw her on Friday. Yeah.
I said, hell, I can do that.
I can do this.
I can do that. And she said, all right. Yeah. And she gave me an hour at 2 o'clock on Sundays against the Bronco games, which, by the way, was the best time. It's like, it was awful. I don't know how you did it. But those type of fights, you did the same thing with DIA. Yeah.
The Ramseys, I gave you a list. I mean, it goes on.
The Ramseys made you a national figure. I mean, you were everywhere. Why did you glom onto that? What was it that pissed you off about it?
Olinger talked about that on Friday on the final show, and it just something went off like it's a spider sense or something. You go, that story smells, and so I started, and that turned into like this spider web of intrigue, and every morning people tuned in to what was the next episode and what had the Ramseys done or what had their defense team done. I could tell you, there's a Lynn Wood story in this, because remember the Ramseys hired Lynn Wood. And I mentioned this about Kaplis, who we both love. And I talked to Danny on the phone yesterday. He called, and we were talking about, we're doing a show. And Danny was on to the Ramseys. And Lynn Wood, and I wish I'd have saved him. He used to call me up and leave me threatening voicemails at Cahill, for real. It's Lynn Wood. And he was always going to sue us.
But you did get sued. Who sued you?
The best one, I got sued because I'd been taken and shown the ransom, not the ransom note, but a copy of the ransom note. And I can never divulge who it was, but he had a badge in his pocket. Who was it? And he took me
So it was a him, he had a badge, I'm getting down.
And he showed me a copy of the ransom note. So Schmodo, I go on the air, and I said, I saw the ransom note. And I had. So the radio show's over, and we're in Donald Lawrence Street then. And I get the call, there's two guys in the lobby who want to see you. So I walked out, and they're from the National Enquirer. Because remember, they parachuted these guys, and they were checkbook journalists. You got some information, we'll pay for it. And they said, have dinner with us tonight. So we went to Rodney's in Cherry Creek. I was married at the time. And I got this class ring. And the guy grabs my hand in front of my ex-wife and says, I'll get you a diamond that big if he gives me the ransom note, which I didn't have and wouldn't have done it. And so I said, first of all, I don't have it, and second, I wouldn't do it. So long story short, the ransom note ends up, they find out it ends up with some FBI guy that understood handwriting. So these two idiots go and knock on a guy's door and try and buy it from a cop. Well, part of the out of this was, they had shown this note around and they'd shown it to me. So I was skiing and we're living, and my son, who's now a man with his own family, son, he answers the door and some guy hits him with a subpoena. Anyway, they threatened to put me in jail. I'm in Douglas County. They're going to prosecute me. And I invoked the press shield. I said, I got a press. They were trying, does talk radio have a press shield? And I'm going, come on, I'm not going to tell you. And the guy who had given me the note was sitting in the back of the courtroom. And, oh no, for real, showed me the note, not gave me the note. And anyhow, so they threatened 2 times they were going to throw me in jail. And I got, throw me in jail. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I think it's like,
I got
it's like when you don't know somebody, it's like throw Pete Boyles in jail. Why don't you just give him $1 million? He would love this shit.
John, I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to go to jail.
Yeah.
And I knew, in Jefferson County, and I knew the sheriff. I said, I'll probably get that Al Capone treatment, but I really said, they said, and I
the
said,
prison guards bringing you cocktails.
Yeah. Bring you a steak. But I said, I'm not going to tell you. And so years later, I'm at a fundraiser. And a guy comes up to me, said, do you remember me? And I said, no. He said, I was the guy who was going to throw you in jail. I shook his hand. I said, okay. But I had to go 3 times. And the 3rd time, they just kind of, I think, I just, fundamentally.
K-How paid the legal fees too, if I recall. They actually stood up and.
It was. I'll tell you who it was. It was Lee Larson. Yeah. Who was on the show.
Let's talk about Lee Larson. Oh. All right, because we talk about Rosa, we talk about you, we talk about Chris Olinger, who did just an incredible job, and all the rest. Yeah. But on the top of all this insanity. Yeah. Was one of the most level-headed guys I've ever seen in radio. Who was Lee Larson?
In life.
Tell me about Lee Larson.
Lee came from California, worked for Gene Autry. And when GE sells, they had to spin off all their products at KOA, and Berg and I were working there. And it was called Below, was the first company. We said, look out Below. And Below morphs into J-Corps. And the legendary Randy Michaels and all these things. Well, coming out of Santa Barbara is this really wonderful guy, Lee Larson. And he inherits, and he told the story when he comes to town and all this change is going on. And the first guy that ever approaches him, contacts him, and gives him the heat is Berg. Berg's beating him up about something. And I can't tell you, he was the guy that would get you through it. And we'd get sued or something would blow up. Or Tancredo's got a great story about talking about the former governor of Colorado and his close personal friend. And Larson, coming in on him going, you better be right. and
he was right.
And he was right because the next morning, and Tommy, who we both adore, Tommy tells a story. He's in the shower, and it's like that scene out of Goodfellas when the guy's beating on the wall because he knew they ripped off Lufthansa. And I'm doing a thing on here because they had pictures of a certain governor giving a goodbye kiss to a close personal friend.
It was Romer and B.J. Thornberry.
Absolutely.
The worst kept affair in all of politics. I mean, everybody knew it. Everybody knew it.
Greatest name, B.J.
You're right. And I remember Westward got into...
Patty Calhoun did it.
Patty Calhoun did the story, gets into hot water, all this. It's and then, of course, a year or two later... I forget the name of the magazine. Somebody takes the pictures.
Like Spy or something. It was true.
And off it is, yeah.
But Tommy tells it all on the air.
Yeah.
And he looks up and Larson's looking in the window with steam coming out of his ears because that's a lawsuit. And the next morning, as Tommy tells the story, this magazine breaks and they're mugging in the car at like Reagan or National or something. Yeah. And Tommy tells the story about taking a shower and beating on a wall, like Ray Liotta in Goodfellas, that he was in the clear. And there's a guy that in talk radio is Tommy. I mean,
because Tom has what you have, which is it's a genetic thing, a lack of a filter. It's from here to here. It's just a direct line with nothing in the middle to stop it.
I mean, he's going through some stuff now too, and I just adore him. And guys like you. I mean, I look at it this way: there was always the us and them.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
it gets back. I hate going back to WKRP because it was a show when I was a kid, and it wasn't that great of a show. But
actually, it was a great show.
Was it?
Oh, I thought so.
I remember. I think the last episode when they went out, Herb Tarlick, the salesman,
who you know 100 of them.
Yeah,
I know 100 Herb Tarlicks.
It goes in and it's in the future, and the radio station is just a computer.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
It's like that isn't too far off.
Well, that's far. That when I worked at KOA, Q1035.
Yeah.
Was right behind us. And that was an automated radio station. It became the Fox, and Lewis and Floorwax, put it through the moon. But that was an automated, people go, I want to talk to the jock. You really don't. You can't, because it's all formatted. And that's what it is now.
And it's not really pre-recorded, but it's all stacked up.
Oh, yeah.
And off it goes.
They pick music.
Remember American Graffiti? The guy goes to the radio station and he sees Wolfman Jack in the background actually doing his thing. And it's like, that's radio right there.
Well, my mentor, Bob Lee, who was worth a book, Bobby knew the Wolf.
Really?
Yeah. And Wolfman comes and opens up they opened up a place called The Wharf. It was a disco on Hamden and I-25. It was a Marriott. Thousands of years ago.
Yeah, it turned into like 15 different things, kind of close to the turn of the century and all these other...
We worked every one of those joints, too. And we worked in discos. I was telling you the story about, working in discos as a kid. We're working for gangsters. I mean, we're like, I like you, kid. Hey, thank you, And you made your bones that way. And so now what happens, long story short, Wolfman Jack's name is Bob Smith. That's his real name.
His name is Wolfman.
Okay, but it's Bob Smith.
I, as a kid, I'm thinking, who'd name their kid Wolfman? Because you're that stupid as a kid.
Well, but it wasn't even Jack, it was Bob.
Yeah.
But they knew each other, and he told stories about border radio, working, and that was what made those guys. And today, what we have, you used to be the mayor, so you can be a talk show host, or you used to work for Donald Trump. Oh, well, let's put you on the air. And so you have this, I think, the end of what we do for a living. But back then, there were these guys, and they were radio guys.
Rick Barber used to tell me about, again, the late night guy at KOA after me, about the glory days of payola, where the advanced guys would come in, give you the records that they wanted you to play, and you pull out the record, and a little baggie of cocaine pops out.
A little.
And it's like, I didn't get to those days. Those were the way before my time days. How bad was it? Or how great was it?
Look, when Ricky said it, I'll take his word for it, but payola, plugola, and this is what's going to happen to talk radio. Those were they were called the scandals. Right. And the scandals were real. My mentor, Bob Lee, went through the scandals in Detroit. It's, the legendary, and again, Alan Freed.
Right.
And the reason why Cleveland is where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is, because that's where Alan Freed kicked it off. And if you ever listen to Huey Lewis, they go, the heart of rock and roll is still beating. Where? In Cleveland. And they were hit-making cities, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Gary, Indiana. It wasn't New York City. It wasn't Miami. It wasn't San Fran. It wasn't Chicago. It was in the Rust Belt where a lot of black and white kids crossed over, and the organized crime guys were there. And they would say, hey, Johnny, give me your car keys. And you throw them your car keys. Your shift is over, 4 new tires, got a mink coat for your wife in the back, open the ashtray, there's a roll of money in there. Guys went to prison for it, and it was called the Scandals. And then,
but all you had to do was play a few records.
But the only guy.
But that's also because you had disc jockeys who decided what they were going to play. Disc jockeys weren't just personalities; they were actually.
Yeah.
You call them up and say, "Hey, can I hear this?" And go, "Yeah, we'll get it for you." And pull it out, put it down.
Maybe, but a lot of that predicated on, and this is why we got somebody called music directors out of that, because individual guys like those guys, and I grew up listening to them. Hey, join me Friday night. They call them hops or sock hops, or
right.
And the guy could plug the hop, and we did that. We took money.
Yeah.
I mean, but you took money at the door. You split the money, and
right.
it's all gone now. We used to do all you can drink for $1 a night. Whew, try that now. but we did that stuff. You know, me and Bob and Uncle Mike McEwen and, you know, all these old legends.
That's just what business was, right?
Charlie Martin. Huh?
That's the way business was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give away stuff. And
well, it's not. Well, because radio pay is so incredible that you could just, you know, you're just rolling it in anyway.
But,
That's a joke.
Bob Lee used to say, you know, if you don't go to work with a mask and a gun, you're going the wrong job. But they knew how to do it. I mean, they had learned in the 50s and 40s. But finally, and it wasn't the FCC that cracked down, it was the U.S. Senate that cracked down on payola and plug-ola. And plug-ola worked like this. You're sitting there with a nice shirt on. You're the news guy. I'm the on-air guy, or it's the other way around. I go, hey, Johnny, what a great shirt. And you go, yeah, man, you know, Kaufman's or Sears.
Yeah.
They got them on sale right now for $9.95. We're all getting free shirts.
Right. Yeah.
And the money's not going to the radio station. You and I, and that was a plug.
And then it became, you know, without you at KNUS and you at KHOW and others, you have a client list and you do live reads. You've told me there was an art to live reads.
Absolutely.
I never had anybody who wanted to advertise on any of my shows, so I wouldn't know about the art of live reads. But you know, where you go comes this group. Rosen has the same thing. These are people, and it used to be driven by, you know, ratings. Now it's more like
performance.
No, yeah, it's I know at you know, my customers here are here because Pete Boyles tells them. I know it because I know my customers. So you make most of your money from the endorsements, right?
There was a time, and it's still pretty prevalent. You have to be careful because you can't, you know, you get one shot, right. And if you send somebody to somebody who rips them off, they're not going to your other guy.
Right.
And so there's an art form to it. And again, I go back to Hal and Alan Berg. And all of these guys, they understood that. And if you were smart enough, they would impart that knowledge to you. If you were like, oh, you know, I'm doing this for these altruistic reasons. And even the old man and those guys said, hey, we're here for the money. We're not here on a mission from God. And that's kind of what's happened to a lot of talk radio. These guys are on a mission from God. We were there to entertain. We were there to inform, but we were there to make money. And Bobby Heenan, when I worked in wrestling, and you and I have talked about this, it's a true story. And this is where I learned everything I know about radio. And I got recruited to, because I wanted to do it, to work in professional wrestling. And I worked indirectly for the legendary Vern Gagne. All the guys.
Well, you were not the wrestler.
No, I was the ring announcer. And I did television interviews. And they'd come rip the mic out of my hand and tell stories. Oh no! I mean, I bumped.
That must have been the best. I'm sorry. That has got to be the best gig, being a ring announcer at a wrestler, because they're all real wrestling fights. So
I never had a better time. I mean, I've had some great times, but I mean, just, you know, when you look at things retrospectively and in pockets, if you would, this was a great time, and this was a great time. And anyhow, so I'm breaking into business, and I marked as a kid. My grandma marked. I mean, we're all marks. And marks are fans. They don't call you a fan. They call you a mark, like in the Carnies. You know, they mark you. And so, no, really, they're called marks. You know, they don't call you a fan. They call you a mark. And so I'm marking, and I called the local guy's name was Gene Reed, local promoter. And I said, I'd like to get some wrestlers on the show. And well, let me check. And it was the legendary Vern Gagne. And Vern came in, and I totally laid down. I marked on him, you know, and kind of looked at me. And the next guy was Larry the Axe Henning. And Larry Henning came in, and I marked for Larry big.
When you say marked, what does that mean?
Lay down. I mean, just, pretend like it's real.
Right,
you know, just go in the tank. You know, you're marking. And
so he would go, I'm going to kill this guy. And you're going to go, no, don't kill this guy.
We're doing shoots. The old Channel 2 bunker, there was that where Fox News is now. It used to be a black bunker there. We shoot factory outlet commercials there. And it was great. But we would shoot a lot of wrestling stuff in there. And they'd have sometimes they came up and stepped up on a box, they'd be bigger. And I'd have the mic, and we would do Casper, Wyoming, Cheyenne, Denver, Springs, Pueblo, Albuquerque, I think was but we'd shoot this because there was no cable and no internet. And the first time we did it, it was the Crusher. Oh, I love Reggie Lazowski, the Crusher. They still do Crusher Fest in Milwaukee. One year we go. So he would come in and he would rip the mic out of my hand, and he would go, and he did the Crusher voice, I'll tell you, he had that, and he'd go,
Right.
The streets are gonna run red with blood, Wednesday night in Casper, Wyoming. Well, okay, so the streets are gonna run red with blood Thursday night in Cheyenne. Streets are gonna run red with blood Friday night in Denver. And John, they're smart, and they call you smarten you up. Like we know what we're doing. And there's works and shoots, and everything's a work. So the first time I go on the road, we're in Casper, and they're marking in Casper big, and there was a screw job ending, and the bad guys won, and so we couldn't get out of the building because there's people waiting outside, drunk. People want to stab you, and all that kind of stuff. So I'm driving. Remember we used to call them church vans, those big. Put 900 guys in them, and they're all smoking weed and drinking, and you driving, and so I'm walking across the parking lot, and I got my tux ripped, and I think I got punched that night. And you had to know Bobby Heenan. I mean, the people that affected your life, Bobby the Brain. And the Brain kind of put his arm around me and kind of mentored me through, some of the insanity till I got where I could make my own world work. So I'm walking with him, and I go, Bob, I said, what a great night. I had this rented tuxedo from some guy on Spear Boulevard, rented tuxes, and shoulder got ripped, and I got nailed. He turns me around the parking lot, and he grabs me like this. And Bob was a big guy. Yeah. Holds me by my shoulders. He said, did you get paid? I went, yeah. Okay. In other words, all of this is whatever this is.
You got paid.
Did you get paid? And I never let that go. Did you get paid? Did they sue you? Yeah. Did this happen? Yeah. Yes. Did you get paid?
And it reminds me, I made my living doing lighting for rock and roll, and it was a kick. I don't want to grow old in it. No. But at the time, it was a kick. Oh. And so this must have been
the best.
All right. You've been clean for a lot of years, if you don't mind me asking. No. I think the way you've talked about sobriety over the years has helped who knows how many people. You'd have Bob Cote on to talk about,
the man,
yeah. Some kids will watch and say, who are all these old people? Bob Cote ran Step 13.
Invented it. The idea,
we don't take any money. We're going to help homeless people with a little tough love. You got to be sober. You got to have a job. We'll get you sober. We'll get you a job. And he had no sympathy. I think about the insanity that's going on around Denver with
he were alive.
If he were alive, he'd
be walking down Lamber Street with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. How long have you been sober?
Be 36 years on Good Friday.
You miss it?
No.
Come on, be honest. There's got to be some time. Really?
No. I mean, I know what would happen.
What would happen?
I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I mean,
I got a sense that it was a good time for you. That the stories you have, you wouldn't miss it.
I was sitting on a dais in Douglas County, and I won't tell you who said it. And
who said it?
No. And said, well, would you mind telling us, Peter, about what you got out of all of those? And I said, greatest 35 years of my life. But
I got money, I got laid, I had fun, people knew me.
But I knew.
How hard was it to get clean?
It was tough. I mean, I'd been living one way so long.
Because I did not know you in those days. I remember hearing you in those days.
I started drinking when I was 12. And I quit after Alan's murder. And
is that what shook it out of you?
It was a huge impact. He was sober. He was the first legitimately sober man I knew. He'd been disbarred because of alcohol. He drove his XKE into Lake Michigan. I mean, there was nothing, that guy. I mean, when we sit and talk, I never knew him as me being sober, but I knew him as him being sober. And, and he was disbarred, for his behavior, alcoholic behavior.
Were you?
Disbarred?
Not disbarred. No. You must have been. Were you ever canned for showing up drunk?
No. I was what's called a functional. I could hide it. And I said before, like when I was with Bob, working with Bob, and we went from 28 in the market to 2 in the market, 3 in the market, and 2 books. And I was like, holy smoke. And the old man had a briefcase. I can tell these stories now. And it looked like it was a cheap Halliburton. And he had foam in it, and he had it cut out. And he would bring in 6 tall Coors in the morning to work, put aside, and we'd have coffee cups. And no, it was part of it. It was what you remember. We're cowboying this thing. It was like, no.
That's again going back to the beauty of it. It was all seat of your pants. It was all by feel. It wasn't. It wasn't that NPR. Let's add the sound effect here and try to script that way. No. The red light goes on, and you start dancing.
It couldn't be done again. It really couldn't be done again. And it's almost like this, like the opening of There Once Was a Time, that some little idiot like me could actually get a shot. I remember. God love her, she's a wonderful woman, B. Romer. And Mrs. Romer and I were doing like this group PSA thing for literacy, and I've been gifted with the ability to read. And I'm standing with Mrs. Romer, who was a delightful, really nice woman. And we're sitting in kind of like a little green room thing. And she said, I have no idea why these people care about what I think. What a humbling thing to say. And I'm thinking, God, because she really is this very kind woman. And I had the same feeling. I was listening to Brockler and Stephan and God love him, Danny Kaplis, and they're all doing these Pete Boyles shows. And I'm going like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know who they're talking about. Because, we just did what we did, and we were cowboys. And it never, when it became corporate, the cowboy part had to go away. But I've told the story before. The guy who wrote Bless the Beast and the Children also wrote The Shootist.
Really?
And I spent time with him and talked with him, in 2 totally opposite books.
I only know The Shootist.
Well, to Bless the Beast and the Children, they're going to shoot these buffaloes and this group of misfit kids.
Right.
So there's a moment in the barn, and Bernard Brooks, played by John Wayne in the films, but when you read the book, he's this old gunfighter. He's dying, and he's good for, I think, 23 guys. And the Ron Howard character, he says to him, he said, Mr. Brooks, how were you able to kill all of those men? He said, I was willing. I was always willing.
How can you stop?
This is only my second day, man.
Yeah. You're going to be like the Who that has 15 retirement tours.
Frank Sinatra.
Yeah, I'm back. No, because I got here when I was like 6 years old in 1970 or something. Wow. And you were there.
I'm gigging.
Yeah. You were tied with Denver. This station, that station, this station, that station.
Oh yeah, more stations than Colorado.
Yeah. Well, and tell me if I've got this right. Colorado has such a competitive radio market, or did, because of our geographic location.
Exactly right.
Is that our airwaves didn't spill into other cities as much. So we were able to have more. FCC gave out more licenses here, so it was especially when AM was still AM before FM took away all the music. It was amazing. You just kind of tune the dial and you find something. You find something weird. So you fake a stroke, which I'm sure is I'm sure it's just another one of.
This is a shooter of work.
Yeah, it's just it was like, was it who was it that sat in every seat in Mile High Stadium?
Steve Kelly.
Steve Kelly. Yeah. It's just another stick for you.
Stunt.
And so hanging up the Spurs, it's just wrong, man. It's just wrong.
That's kind. I mean, everything has a beginning and a middle and an end. And I told you this. I tried to fight when I was a kid, and I wrote the column about it when Marciano took the gloves off, and he was 49-0, 43 knockouts or 46 knockouts. I mean, nobody was better. And he takes the gloves off, and he said, "I have nothing left to prove," and I'm a huge Rocky fan. And he got away and loses his life in a plane crash, but regardless, walked out of the ring pretty much unscathed. Look at Muhammad.
Yeah.
Look at the original Sugar Ray Robinson.
Yeah.
Look what happened to Joe Frazier. They start getting hurt. And I say this, I wrote it about Tom Brady. I worry about Tom Brady coming back. Some kid coming around the end, 23-year-old kid, just take his head off. You end up this Joe Namath in a Rams uniform sitting on the helmet. And I love Joe Namath. I mean, Joe Namath is my true idol. And I don't want to be that guy. I mean, I want to be okay. Lee Larson, who we talked about, Lee called me. He's in Arizona. He'll be home. He said, "You beat everybody. You outlasted everybody. Now's the time." And, you know the guys, Brian and Kelly and Mel and everybody, and they went like, "Stay." And I went, "No, it's time to go." And it's cool to sit because, I mean, people don't know how much I adore you. I love you. And we've been through good and bad together, and I've seen you.
When my daughter died, you were one of the people who picked me up and kept me going, and get the phone call. "How you doing today, man?" It was.
I have a friend here, Dina's here, and I told her a story about getting her hair cut.
Yeah.
You don't have much to lose. I, on the other hand, had hair then.
It was St. Baldrick's Day.
St. Baldrick's.
And so we got our head shaved, and I remember like, well, we did it live on Channel 9.
There's a lot of Billy Goat Gruffs who said, "Yeah, I'll be there." We never saw them.
Yeah, I'll come on
help you, John. Yeah.
Right. My wife at the time, she had her head shaved.
That's right.
She got tons of sympathy. I went to an event that night, some political event. Nobody noticed I shaved my head. That was a sacrifice for me.
No, but I remember doing that stuff and seeing you go through it, and I know your love, and it's a rarity. I mean, you make friends in this business and you make enemies in this business.
Well, and I don't think anybody's made deeper friends and enemies than you over time. There are people who spit on the ground when you walk by,
and they should.
Yeah, but there's nobody else who called them on the crap the way that you
Nietzsche,
did. Yeah.
I'm a reader of Nietzsche, and Friedrich Nietzsche said, "Don't tell me who likes you. Tell me who doesn't like you, then I will know who you are." In other words, you're not known by your friends. I can name Dave Logan's, Mike Rosen, Caplis, and they go, "Peter, we're all you. Tell me the guy doesn't like you. Then I'm going to know who you are." The mayor doesn't like me.
I'll tell you who doesn't like you.
Yeah.
Everyone in mainstream media doesn't like you. Anybody in mainstream news doesn't like you.
Sure.
Anybody who's been part of what I believe to be one of the more corrupt cities in the country. And the corruption in Denver and Colorado politics is so different than Chicago. Chicago, it's in the back room. Here it is. Yeah. We'll have a mandate for this feel-good energy, and then you, Excel, get to double bill everybody, and we'll do it out in the open.
Sure.
Here's a land deal. We'll do it here. I'll tell you what. This bond house will run the election for your school district's bond, and then you give them the business after. It's all out in the open. It's ridiculous how insider and crony Colorado is, and it's ugly. It is truly ugly. But it has this veneer of being, just nice.
But that's the part of this that goes back to Nietzsche. Don't tell me who likes you. I have no idea who you are. Tell me who doesn't like you, and I'll know who you are.
So when you and I started up, and we were doing that RTD thing, that's when I got the education on what politics really is. Yeah. It's the people making the money. Yeah, and it's the people that are making money and the people who feel good controlling other people's lives. And when they get together, you get the Birkenstock wearing elitists who want to tell other people how to live, and the necktie wearing bond dealers together. Oh man, that's a killer combination.
Bond daddies run Denver.
Yeah, and it's
fat cats and bond daddies, law firms.
Yeah, and they, and you were one of the few that put a spotlight on.
I never got invited anywhere. I never got invited anywhere. They used to say, "Well, how come you didn't get invited?"
Yeah,
and there's a reason.
What are you going to miss the most? I know waking up at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. and a foot of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
I don't know yet because it's so new. This is only my second day. I mean, my first full day of retirement was Monday, and I had a full day. Today I got a full day.
So basically, this probably won't air for a few weeks, and we'll get it up. By then, you'll probably be back behind a microphone. Be like,
hey, they made it real clear. Yeah. Hey, that door's open. Yeah. But George is there now, and the final lesson. It's a horrible lesson. Alan Berg's life was taken. There was somebody on the air the next morning.
There has to be.
Sure. I got a note. We were kidding about radio before this began. So I get home from the hospital, and my daughter brings me home on a Friday. And I spent the night in Aurora in a medical center. It's a wonderful place. And I came home, and I got a text from, I won't tell you who, it said, "Are you coming in Monday?" Johnny, or should we get a replacement? I'm thinking, what part of?
You had a heart attack or something a few years back.
I had bypass surgery.
Yeah, I remember you did it over the phone or something.
I wanted to get back on the job so badly that Daryl Luby, who we both love, DB brings the entire thing over to my house, and I go on the air for like 2 days, and I can't do this. I got to go back to work. But that was like, they're going to happen. I mean,
well, when you think about it, and this is what I love about radio as well, is there's a I forget what it is. There's a 7-second alarm. If there's more than a few seconds of dead air, some alarm goes off. It goes off, and people parachute in.
Yeah,
oh my God, what's going on? So you can't have an awkward pause. The dead air is, and so it's like your fat mother-in-law that needs to be fed. It just has to keep going. Right.
Keep banging. Playing what they're saying.
Yeah.
A mound to sound, a wax to watch, a discovery.
So when the station moved from down in Lawrence to the building down in the tech center, it all got digitized. No more carts. Carts were like these 8-track tapes you put in there. And the thing would always freeze up. So I'm doing a late night show, and it froze. And the only thing that was on was the microphone. And so no commercials. No updates, no sports, no news, no nothing, no callers. And so for an hour and a half without a break.
There you go. When people ask me, how do you do it? Or because we're talking about doing a broadcast school, I said, take a towel, cover the phones, do an hour.
Yeah.
And do a good hour. And no spot breaks. No phone calls.
I always said it's like go into your closet, close the door, hold a beer bottle, and talk for an hour and see what comes out.
See what you got.
Yeah.
3 things everybody thinks they can do: grow a garden, 10 bar, and do a talk show. They're all tough. The other 2 are tougher. But there isn't an ability that you're given when you're born. And you either have it or you don't. And I think it's like hitting a baseball. You can have people become your swing coach, but you either can hit that ball or not hit that ball. And I looked at guys, I come back to this. Rosen came in, sat down and did it.
Yeah.
Dave Logan walked off the football field and did it. AB came out of he had a shirt shop and a boot shop, the boot broker and the shirt broker.
Alan Berg had a shirt shop?
Yeah, shirts and shoes. And came in and sat down behind the microphone at KWBZ and got it. True story. The rest of us, we worked, we learned. But he sat down. True story. I'm doing mornings with Bob Lee on KLEK. Elvis Presley dies. I mean, men are calling, crying. He's gone.
Yeah,
Berg's on the air at BZ. He said the guy couldn't carry a note.
Oh, God.
Now, He was a heel.
Pete,
I love you.
I love you too, man. You've done so much for me personally. I love my time in radio. I love listening to you. I love.
We got this.
Yeah, it's a slice of Denver that will never be the same with you off the air,
kind.
and it sucks. So change your mind.
Come back.
Fall out of the chair someday, dying.
Growing up and going to the movies, and this is where the cowboy rides away. I mean, this is where the and I said this before. I'll tell you something I haven't never said publicly. When I'm working at Cat Radio, I get my first break, and Jack Merker wants me to come in and work nights. I've never told this story. And come in and just practice radio. Everybody had a production room back then, and it was a replica of the on-air. And because it had spins and dials and sliders and turntables and microphones. And I would play radio at night. I was going to school, going to grad school, and I'd come in, and my daughter was just tiny, and my dad had passed away. And I had the keys to get up in that studio, because it was a daytimer. And I'd cue records, and there was tapes called skimmers. Skimmers are brutal. All a skimmer tape does is you. In other words, when the mic switch is on, the tape's rolling. The minute you shut them, you can get brutalized in a skimmer session. But it isn't the spots, the commercials, it isn't the tunes, although maybe the intro, because you always read, you got 8 seconds to talk or 15 seconds to talk.
So you got a reel. Let me just see if I got this in English. You've got then a reel.
It's on the wall. It's reeling on the wall. Yeah. When you hit the mic button, when you flip the mic switch, it starts to record you. And then you go into a session with the program director. In this case, it was Jack Merker. And Jack Merker, you could hear an hour of radio in 4 minutes or 5 minutes. And he would critique. He was a tough critiquer. I had it coming. I had to learn. Okay. So I'm sitting in there. And
there's nothing more brutal. It's the best way to get good on radio is to hear yourself on radio. And it's the worst.
And having some guy in your ear going, why'd you say that? So I'm in the room, and it's on a Friday night, and I'm playing radio. And I'm taking a break, and I push back and I have my feet on the console, smoking a cigarette. And you could see all of Denver because the Playboy Club's right up here. I heard a voice. The voice said, "Where you been? We've been waiting for you." I've never told that story publicly. I heard it.
You heard the voice?
I heard it. A woman's voice.
It said, "Where you been?
Where you been? We've been waiting for you."
In radio.
That's the lady in the red dress. I chased her now for 50 years. She's always there, and she's gone. She's in a rainstorm. She cuts the corner. I chase her. She's over here, and I chase her. It's the woman in the red dress. It's me in radio. That's the truth. And I heard her say to me, 1977, "Where you been? We've been waiting for you." And I knew that moment that forget grad school, forget everything else. I needed to be in this business. And we worked, and I would tell people I could do things that I didn't know how to do. Can you do that? Yeah, I can do that.
I can do that.
I can do that.
It's passion.
But that was the moment. And I think everybody that's worth their salt on some level has that moment. And I had it. I swear to you, I had it. It was like this, and I've seen the woman dozens of times. Never held her hand. I'll leave you with that. That's the truth. That's the answer to truth.
I love you, Pete.
I love you more.
Thanks for everything.
Nah, brother, man. Thank you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.